What's up everybody, Matt Maran here for a little quick drive in the 2026 Cadillac OPTIQs. So for 2026, even though the OPTIQ just came out 10 months ago, we have a new stronger rear motor here for the OPTIQ, and also now the option for a rear-wheel drive OPTIQ for 2026. And but here for the all-wheel drive versions, you also get a huge jump in power. You also get an NACS port now on all 2026 OPTIQs, and so that'll open up, the Tesla charging network natively. You still, of course, can use adapters. So if you have CCS and the J1772, in your home, you can still use this, and that won't be an issue. You just have to have that adapter. But I mean, it's kind of unheard of that just one model year later, you have a huge bump in power. That's significant. And so we're just on a quick little drive loop here, so I don't have a ton of time here, but really, aside from those two changes, the OPTIQ is the same, because again, it just came out 10 months ago, and I love the OPTIQ on my first drive of it. I just did a full review on OPTIQ earlier this year. Definitely check out that for all of my thoughts on OPTIQ in general, as well as my thoughts on the new OPTIQ V here that is just now coming out, and we just drove here today as well. But as far as the regular OPTIQ all-wheel drive here, so you have now 440 horsepower, which is 140 horsepower more than last year's OPTIQ all-wheel drive, which was around 300 horsepower, which I think was plenty, and especially for the buyer of a regular OPTIQ. There was no need for more power, but Cadillac said that, whenever they introduced the V version, it made sense just from a production standpoint and streamlining everything to just put that stronger Cadillac rear motor in here and give you that power bump. And, it wasn't really much of an inconvenience. So that's what they did. They, of course, retuned everything, of course, to work with the different, weight characteristics of having that larger rear motor, and also just, how that affects handling and all that. But yeah, 440 horsepower, and also 498 pound-feet of torque. So I mean, we have, again, a lot of power, and you'll be able to see that with the badge there denoted on the back with the 700 now for these versions here. Otherwise, there's no other changes here, and still looks fantastic in this blue. But I put it up into the sport mode here, and let's see how the OPTIQ accelerates now. Here we go. Yeah, it's a good amount of power. Feels very quick. Again, I had no complaints with regular OPTIQ. 300 horsepower and a regular luxury crossover is still plenty. But this, I like how it lifts up the nose there a little bit, and it is quick. They claim a 4.5 second 0 to 60 time now. And the great thing is, even with the power upgrade, they actually managed to eke out 1 extra mile of range. So they've improved the efficiency here, and still same battery pack and everything, but it's now 303 miles of range. And so again, fantastic top-notch range for this segment, and doing it again now with extra power, with really no downside whatsoever, which is phenomenal. That it's just all pros and no cons here for this upgrade. It makes sense as to why they decided to go ahead and add this in just one model year after launching this car. But yeah, drives great, and everything else still feels fantastic. It's still just a wonderfully smooth ride, still so nice and quiet and refined. Again, all the same great qualities you love about OPTIQ, and I loved about OPTIQ at least, are still present here. And yeah, it's very, very nice. But I want to try out the rear-wheel drive version as well. We have one of those here, so we'll try that out now and see how that is. All right, so now we're in the rear-wheel drive version of the OPTIQ, which will be denoted now with the 450 badge there on the back. And it's really great that we now have a two-wheel drive option for those who live in a place where you don't need all-wheel drive. You save yourself some money. They were able to drop $2,000 out of the base price of the OPTIQ while they made this transition to the rear-wheel drive version. And it still gives you a bunch of power, because again, you have that stronger rear motor, both upgraded for the all-wheel drive and for the rear-wheel drive versions here, again thanks to those additions from OPTIQ V and that development. And so we're going to go ahead and turn down. I'm going to put it into the sport mode here, and we will go ahead and turn down onto the back road and see how the rear-wheel drive version does. Here we go. And it's nice and punchy. So even with just the rear motor, we still have more power than the last year all-wheel drive version. So we have 315 horsepower here, so actually 13 more than last year, I believe. And then you have also 332 pound-feet of torque, which is also an improvement. And I believe this one's about a 5.5 seconds 0 to 60 time. And you still actually have really good range, actually the best range, thanks to it just being, again, the single motor there in the back. So you now have 317 miles of range here for the rear-wheel drive version. So another perk. So you save money, you still get an upgrade in power over last year, and you get the best range and a nice little improvement there over the all-wheel drive version that was previously standard there in OPTIQ. And I also talked to them about whether front-wheel drive would have been more beneficial, but it really just came down to that rear motor, and again, everything being, once they did the work to fit that rear motor in for the OPTIQ V and beef those up, then the trickle-down effect just meant that it was easier to do the rear-wheel drive version. It just made more sense to do rear-wheel drive versus front-wheel drive. And anyone who's in an area where you see any kind of weather, you're going to go for the all-wheel drive version anyway. So whether it was front or rear-wheel drive didn't seem to matter to those who don't care about not having all-wheel drive. So that's kind of, I think, why they ended up going for it this way. And we don't really have any super tight corners or anything to really test this rear-wheel drive version, but one of the other benefits of the rear-wheel drive is that you have a lighter front axle and a little bit of a reduction in curb weight all around, as a result of just the one motor instead of two. And so, in that way, this will be, the lightest OPTIQ and one of the nicest handling ones of the bunch. Although, of course, if you were worried about handling, go for the OPTIQ V with all of its great handling upgrades. But, just a nice little extra perk as well. Less is more. And so, yeah, no other changes to really report on here, but, a huge improvement, again, especially for that all-wheel drive version here. Great, we had the rear-wheel drive. Great, we have the NACS port here. And, again, completely unexpected. Usually the second model year is complete carryover, and the fact that we have all these improvements here just the second model year just shows just how much they're advancing. Now, don't expect another 140 horsepower next year. Obviously, if you want more power, just go up to the OPTIQ V version there. I did do a full review on that just went live here as those are coming online. By the way, all these new versions of OPTIQ, I believe, are in production now and should be showing up at dealers very soon, if not already. But yeah, definitely check out my review of the OPTIQ V. Check out my review from earlier this year on the regular OPTIQ for all of my thoughts on OPTIQ and what it felt like with that prior motor setup, and my thoughts on this interior and all the other details as far as how it compares to the competition and everything like that. But overall, really great, nice little improvements here, and happy to see them for 2026. But let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below, and a huge thanks to Cadillac for providing me here with this opportunity. Thank you all very much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe to keep these videos coming, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.